Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Fully Booked, the Hidden Gems author podcast, in which Craig Touch and myself, Roland Hume, chat to authors about this wild and crazy business we're in of self-publishing. And today, wow, we have a trio just as iconic as the three Spider-Men we saw in No Way Home. We have Kathy Fawcett, we have Stacey Wilk, and we have Jen Talty, who are the amazing brains behind Candlewood Falls, which is something really, really exciting. It is a shared universe of books, all set in my native New Jersey. So I am really, really excited to talk to you all. KM, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here.
That's wonderful.
Thank you for having me on.
Stacey, how are you doing today?
I am doing awesome as well. Thank you for having us. I'm really excited to get to tell you guys about Candlewood Falls.
And Jen, how are you doing today?
A-OK. Nice and warm down here in rainy Florida.
Well, that is wonderful to have you here. And of course, we have the man himself, Craig Touch, the owner and founder of Hidden Gems and an author himself. How are you doing today, Craig?
I'm doing well, and it's a full house, so we're pretty excited to get into this. I was just talking before we started about the idea of whether or not this is a collaborative effort or a shared world effort, right? And so then just to make sure everyone's clear on the differences, the collaborative would be everyone writing sort of the same book, taking people do it differently. Some people, the one person will write a chapter, another will write another one, or sometimes they split it up differently. Whereas this is more of a shared world, almost like the Kindle Worlds idea back in the day, where they've created a world, Candlewood Falls, and they each write books within that shared world. But Stacey said it's a little bit more complicated than that, so maybe she can give us the skinny on that.
Well, what we do, which we think is what makes us unique, is that we share characters and events in each other's stories. So KM and Jen's characters are in my books and my characters are in their books. So we really have this fully developed town and place, and we like to call it our literary soap opera.
That's awesome. So it's not just the world you're sharing, but the characters as well. So I guess, how does it work? One person will write a book and they'll introduce some characters, and then they're now a free for all for anyone else to use in their books.
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
Sorry. What we tend to do is we have our own characters, and we kind of share each other. So if I have a scene that I want Jen's character to be in, then I will write the scene. I will give it to her, and I will say, does this sound right for your character? Or, can you make any adjustments or changes? And then we'll collaborate that way. And she'll be like, well, my character wouldn't exactly say that. How about this? And so we don't tend to use our main characters as a free-for-all. Some of the secondary characters maybe, but we always go back and forth with each other to say, what would your character do? How would they respond?
Right. So like the crotchety old shopkeeper, he might show up in everybody's book. And yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I guess I imagine.
I was going to say, I think there's one character. Well, there's one character that tends to, which I didn't really, when I started writing her, I didn't intend for this to happen, but we do have a character that we all kind of love to poke fun at, and that's Louiser. She's the matriarch of my family, whom she had 7 children. The last 4 were out of wedlock, though, with the same person, her husband, ex-husband, but and she's just kind of this unique human being that everybody's afraid of, but not really afraid of. And I think she just kind of shows up and just everybody kind of calls her the Weezer, and she just kind of shows up in everybody's book as a comical relief, kind of a joke, but not really a joke. And that's kind of one way where we all kind of end up sharing and making a laugh, or kind of using each other's characters, where it's, and we can kind of say and pull our stories together and make it a really rich town, a really rich, where it's not where we want to say universe or world, or like you mentioned, Kindle World, where it's really, really different, because this is, it to us, because we're fiction writers, it feels very real life. This is just sitting in, you go to the Coffee Bean, which is one of our coffee places where you just kind of going sitting around and having a cup of coffee, and it's like, oh my God, there goes a Weezer, and it's kind of like we almost joke about that. It's like if we were all together, it'd be like, oh my God, that actually looks like the Weezer, right? So it's kind of very rich and very real to us, and didn't mean to create this character that way, just kind of how she turned out.
I think that's great. I mean, that's the way it should go.
My lights just went off.
Yeah, you're having some storms over there. So I see the lightning actually showing up as well. Characters, fiction authors often say, the characters take on a life of their own. And, they don't really write the character. The character tells their own story in their own voice, and they just sort of put it on paper for them. So that totally makes sense. I imagine there's a lot of sort of planning that has to go into this as well. And given the fact that you guys are sort of in all different areas of the country, how do you handle that?
Well, I was going to ask as well, how do you even get started on this?
Well, it started a couple of years ago, I guess now. A friend of ours came to us and said, what do you think about writing this world where we share characters? And we all jumped on board to do it. Unfortunately, our friend passed away before Candlewood Falls went live. So we continued, for her as well as for ourselves. And we just sat down and said, okay, we need a world or we need a town. What should we base it on? And we thought small town, and what do you have in a small town? And so we built the shops and the history of the town, and then the families that are in the town, and we grow it as we need it. So if somebody doesn't have a character you can use, you make that character. So I would say that I needed a garage because my hero in my first book crashes his motorcycle. So now I say, we have a garage and this is who runs it and this is who the guy is. And so if you need a garage, now you've got one.
Now we got one.
Yeah.
And I tended to start, big with a family of 7 who owned the local winery. And I've kind of stuck with that and, using these children as my heroes or heroines, and then bringing in. So then there was a local doctor that I brought in and a returned hero that was in the NHL as a hockey star. So just kind of building on that. And then we kind of, we each start with our own idea. So it's not like we're sitting down and saying, and necessarily plotting our books with each other. We each start with our own idea and staying true to what our own each individual series are. But then as we have kind of an idea of what we want our next book to be, it's like, okay, this is what I want to write. And then it kind of spurs us on, like, yeah, that's like a really great idea. I kind of want to do this. And like, oh, that's going to really fit really good with, like, just an example. Stacey and I happened to be talking one day, and she was like, yeah, I want to do this. And her hero's brother happened to be like a street painter. And I'm like, oh my God, like my hero's coming home. Like, that guy like paint like this mural of my guy? And she's like, well, yeah, why not? So then it was just, it was like a small scene, but it brought the 2 books together. And Kathy and I happened to be talking another time, and it was, well, I need a lawyer. And I'm like, well, my dad's a lawyer. Like, so it just kind of brings around, and it happens very organically. So it's not these like forced things where we're trying to figure out how do we really make it happen. It just happens.
Right. And I also think that a lot of the planning was in the beginning, right? So before book 1 came out, we had to do a lot more planning. So we had to sit down and say, what is this town going to look like? Who are our characters going to be? Stacey and I actually have relatives. So some of my characters and some of her characters are cousins. And then we have friendships with Jen's characters. So there's a lot of crossover between everything. But we had to do a lot of that up front in the beginning. Now that we're working on our 4th book, each of us have our 4th book coming out in August. And we have this town. And like Jen said earlier, it's really... our town feels very real to us. So now we have this great cast of characters. We have these great businesses, events going on in town. So it just starts really becoming a lot easier for us to say, okay, I need this character. Oh, I could pick from this person's cast of characters, or I need a character to do this. I'll pick from this person. So the beginning was a little bit harder, but now it's things are rolling pretty well.
Yeah.
And I know that's incredibly satisfying as a reader. It's like I love reading a series where you have reoccurring characters, and when they pop back in, it's just such a delight.
Yeah. Yeah, the readers seem to get a big kick out of the fact that they can see favorite characters in each other's books, and we love that. We love that feedback. So that's why we kept going, because the readers think it's neat. We think it's neat.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I imagine that means that you end up expanding your audience between you. Somebody might discover the series and then from one author, and then go and read the books from the other authors, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I know I definitely got some readers from both Jen and from Stacey. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an inspiration for the reader to go find the other authors, because they might say, oh my gosh, I love this character. And then we try to also direct you at the back of the book. If you want to learn more about why this was happening, because like if there's a scene in my book, and I'll use my winter book as an example. I have a scene near the end. Well, actually, we all have this same scene in our books, but it's all from different points of view, obviously, and all for different reasons. So in my book, my character notices Kathy's hero checking out Kathy's heroine. So my characters are all like, ooh, what's going on over there? So I actually had an advanced reader say to me, what's that all about? And I said, see, you have to go read now and find out why he's checking her out. So at the back of my book, it says, if you want to know why Dean's checking out Lacey. And so it helps to really inspire the reader. There's a reason for them to check in with the other books.
Right. Yeah.
So why did you pick New Jersey? Which I think is I love New Jersey. I think it's an underrated state. But you could have picked upstate New York. You could have picked Minnesota or Wisconsin. Yeah, I love upstate New York as well. But
I'm from upstate New York.
Well, so you're from upstate New York, and Stacey, obviously you've got connections to New Jersey.
Well,
I'm born and raised at the shore, baby.
Yeah, the reason why we chose New Jersey was because 3 out of 4 of us were from New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Oh wow!
And you know what? I say yes to everything. So sure, I could be from
Jen
New
was
Jersey.
cool with New Jersey.
I was, you know what?
It's not that different. So
Right.
In most of my books, I've only written about upstate New York. I mean, and Florida. So I'm like, yeah, I'll branch out and try something new. And there's wineries and I always wanted to do a book about a winery. And I'm like, there are a lot of wineries in New Jersey, so this works.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I went to the tour of the wineries just a couple of years ago.
Oh
yeah, and I want this project sung to me. I mean, when we sat down and started talking about it, I'm like, yes, I want to do this, and I wanted to write with these women. This was like something. It's like they talk about you have a book of your heart. I've had more than one book of my heart, and this is a project of my heart. I really wanted to do this.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that's probably, I mean, for you, for maybe being the one that isn't from New Jersey, I guess it's easier because you have the support of the other authors who are. So if they're writing, and building up the scenes, they can fact check you on if you all of a sudden do some New Jersey faux pas. They might say, hey, no, we don't do that here.
What was fun too was that Jen had come up to do a book signing, and we went to a couple different places around. But then we also took her to one of the towns that inspired Candlewood Falls, so she got to see what the town looked like and the big mill and everything. And it's a town in Stacey and I actually live in the same town. So she's 10 minutes away from me. But it's like the next town over, and our town is inspired by that one and the one that we live in. So,
which town is it?
So the where we live is Reddington Township. So the White House Station section is part of what we were thinking in our head with the, the cute little train stop that, is now a bookstore and all that. But the other town that inspired us was Clinton Township and the big mill. So it's one of the big, the most photographed mill in New Jersey. So a lot of people might recognize that. And, it was a lot of fun. We also took some pictures, put it up on our Facebook page to say, hey, this is what our town was inspired by.
Wow, that's great. The only experience I have in New Jersey is Atlantic City, so probably very different.
New Jersey, Craig, we'll show you the pretty parts.
Yeah, I know that's not not the place to go. I was just in the casinos, so but.
Hills of New Jersey when they think of New Jersey, right? So, we live out in horse country out here. There's a lot of course, there's a lot of development going on now, so some of that's going away. But we still live in an area of the state that has a lot of farms, wineries, and it's very pretty out here.
Yeah, it's still the garden part of the Garden State,
right?
Yeah, I imagine that's a much better setting for a romance series than the boardwalks of Atlantic City. But I imagine that there's a lot of challenges to writing in a shared world. I know. So you guys write your own books, but you still have to sort of keep in track. I'm thinking about things like, when I've written series, sometimes it's hard enough to keep track in my own mind, in my own series, of the characters, of the settings, of all that stuff. And you guys are doing it across, you each have 4 books, right? So 12 books. Mm-hmm. How do you manage that? Do you have like a big spreadsheet of like all the characters and traits and places and all that stuff? Yeah.
Yep. We do. We have a map that we drew. So yeah, we have the spreadsheet with all the characters and maybe what they look like and what they do and who their love interest is. Am I missing anything? Kathy, you're good with the spreadsheet.
Yeah. So the Bible, I call it the Bible, has all those things. Also, I think what book the characters are in. But the problem is sometimes we don't always update it. So, we're friends. We just text each other like, what does the character look like? And, if something's not updated, it's like, we just text each other and ask. So in the middle of the day, I'll just get a random text from Jen or Stacey to say something. And, would your character do this? Or where's your, all those kinds of things. So it's fine.
Yeah.
So
when you envisioned this, did you have to have excuse the expression, sort of like a come to Jesus moment where you all sat down and were like, okay, this is the feel of it. This is any sort of set some boundaries and some rules or anything?
Well, we just. Oh, sorry, Stace. And we decided that, our phrase for the town is, have we got a story for you? So we knew that it could be any kind of story anybody wanted to write, so we're basically there. It's contemporary, small town, contemporary romance, but there's a little bit of mystery in some books. I have a little bit of paranormal in my first book where my hero and heroine accidentally make a love potion. And, so there's a lot of, we can go off into little different directions and everything. So when we came up with the idea, we wanted to make it a little bit more open for all the authors to be able to write what they wanted to write.
Right. I think the only thing we had to make sure we were in agreement with was where did things in the town lay out. So one of my characters has an alpaca farm, and then the family that Kathy and I share own the orchard, and then Jen's family owns the winery. So there's a river that runs behind the orchard and separates it from the winery. So we had to make sure we all lined up, because we have scenes, Jen and I, in our first books where her Weezer character likes to hang out with my alpacas, and we had to make sure that we lined up the alpaca farm right with the winery without the river getting in the way. So those were I think in the beginning, some of the bigger challenges, so that, Jen didn't say she crossed the street and I said they were right on the other side of the field, something like that.
I hope somebody's listening to this and realizes that actually romance is a very derided genre, and an awful lot of thought and intellect and planning and stuff goes into these things.
Yeah,
of course.
Well, and I think the other thing that we did, even though, because we each come to this writing a little different book, Kathy was writing sci-fi romance. Both Stacey and I have written in, the romantic suspense genre. But if we sat down and described what we actually, not what we actually write, but Stacey tends to write more women's fiction in her full length. And I tend to write more suspense in my full length. So the three of us generally are coming at things from a different vantage point, because they are different. They are slightly different genres. They do have slightly different rules. You do things slightly differently. And so we wanted to be able to open that up so that we weren't saying okay, I had to write women's fiction, because that would just kind of make me twitch a little, because that's not what my strength is. And we all wanted to be able to play to our strengths. Right. Yet we all wanted to expand our palette, so to say, because, I've written something like 70 books at this point in my career. I don't want to write the same thing over and over again. And sometimes that's what happens. So to expand into writing something that is a little bit more women fiction, or a little bit, writing Weezer was like something new for me. I mean, she was just like an exceptional character for me. That was not my comfort zone. And the first book was probably the most contemporary romance that I have ever written in my entire life. The second book, I kind of slipped back into my mystery suspense kind of feel. And then the third book was another switch for me. It was a little different. So it's really given us an opportunity to stretch our writing and to be better writer. It's made me a better writer, if anything, and given us an opportunity to kind of see where we can go in our careers.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I'm thinking too about, I'm still thinking, because in my mind, it's, such a daunting task, right? Of this big world, and everybody's writing their own stuff, and you have to, keep sort of pace with making sure that you're not breaking any of the rules. And, for example, like you were talking about laying out the town, right? And then earlier you were saying, well, I added a garage. Well, now it's like, where do I put the garage? Now you've got to pull out that map, figure out where's the garage going to go, right? So that everyone knows.
Yeah.
So
yes, definitely.
Right. Not only have the map and the Bible, but Stacey and I also have a family tree. So I went on familyecho.com and I made a family tree for our characters so that we could kind of see, who's the grandparents and the parents and the kids, right? So we have all the cousins and everything, because it was getting a little confusing, who belongs to the parents and where do they live and how old are they? Because as we write the books, we are using pretty much today as our date, right? So if we have a character in book 1, which came out in September, who's 31, well, now we've got our August book coming out. Well, that character might be 32 now, right? So we have to kind of keep in mind, like, when were they born, so I could do the math and figure out how old this character is. So there is a lot to kind of keep track of. But I think one way to kind of fudge that a little bit is not getting too detailed, so that we don't have to, make those mistakes. So you don't want to be, too detailed. You want to have enough that it makes it sound like it's a real world, it's a genuine person and all that. But too much detail, you could trip yourself up.
Right.
That was one of the things. Sorry, Jen, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I try not to say like I do have the map, but I try not to say like, I was very careful. I did have to, I don't know who I called or texted. It was like Kathy or Stacey, but in one of the books where like, okay, is the coffee house across the street from the beauty salon? Like, I don't remember, like, do they have to cross the street or it's on the same side of the street? And then I said, you know what? I'm just going to go, they waved down the street, because I don't remember. So trying to be as vague as possible, because you do, as writers, and I'm only going to speak for myself, me as a writer, I have a very vivid imagination, obviously, and I get these pictures in my head. Once that picture's in my head, it doesn't go away.
Mhm.
And so I'll have this vision of the town in my head, and I can guarantee you it's not the same vision that Stacey has, and it's
Right.
not the same vision that Kathy has. And so, like, even when I'm describing characters, I remember having this conversation with Kathy one day, and she was like describing Carter's desk, and I'm like, just don't go into detail, because I'm not going to in my book. And she's like, oh, okay. And because, number one, I don't want to give that much detail to the reader. I want the reader to go into the room and start visualizing it. So I might say there's a tall bookcase that has books and pictures, but I'm not going to go into detail on describing it, because I want the reader to kind of feel and touch and see for themselves. So I kind of do that in the same way with the streets, where it's like, okay, the beauty parlor, this, that, or whatever, but try not to go, like Kathy said, too much into detail, because what I will do is then 4 chapters later, I'll say the complete opposite, and somebody will pick it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking you almost need to, for characters, maybe, well, I mean, you probably don't want to, because it would lock you in, but I guess you could use as much detail as you want, but like almost like, okay, I'm going to have this character and I'm basing it off this famous actor. And then so that everyone can use that as a reference, right? So it's like, okay, I'll check out a picture of him. Oh, he has dark hair. Okay, I know he has dark hair. Oh, he has green eyes. Oh, I can write green eyes. And then you could give as much detail as you want, right? But I was kind of thinking, right, like one of the things I was going to ask about, and you sort of answered, was about the timeline, because I was wondering whether or not you're keeping it within the same timeline, and it sounds like you are, in the sense that it's all real time. But does that mean you guys sort of have to keep pace with each other for your books? You know, if somebody's writing a book and they're basing it on current time, and it takes them a lot longer to write it than the other two, and they publish, 1 or 2 extra books, I mean, is it going to throw off the timeline? But I guess it depends on how closely you're doing it. But it's not like one person's writing something that is like years before and another one's writing years later, right?
So what we tend to do is have seasons that we are releasing in. So we have our fall books, we have our winter books, our spring books, and our summer books coming up. So we tend to write within that season. And I think Jen has in her winter book, I think it started in November and went through January. Whereas my winter book, I think it was 2 weeks. It was like 10 days or something. So my, time frame was very short, where hers was longer, and both work because it's still at the same time of year. And yeah, as long as we kind of stick within that time frame, I think that works pretty well.
We also release on the same day. We're never, thus far, have not released separately. So when we release a winter book, it's on the same day. When we release a fall book, it's on the same day, and so on and so forth. And again, like we call the winter book for Kathy. It was truly a Christmas book. For me, it was really more of a Valentine's Day book, because it ends on Valentine's Day when my couple gets married. But it's a winter release because we released it in the winter.
Right.
That's a good way to handle it. I guess you just have to be careful that if you're using shared characters, you're not colliding. Like, oh, I had her doing this on Valentine's Day. Well, I had her doing this on Valentine's Day.
Well, that's why we check in with each other, especially if you're using a major character. We make sure that we're not doing that to each other. So we do talk about time frames so that we're not messing that up, because then a reader who's going to read all the books might, especially if they read them all at once, might catch that, well, you said this happened in November, but Jen's book, it's December, and Kathy's book, it's January. So we check in and make sure that our timelines fit our books, so that like that shared scene I was telling you about in our winter book, it's Kathy's first scene and it's one of my last scenes, and then Jen, yours is probably in the middle somewhere, right?
It's right smack dab in the middle of the book.
But it's the same day. It's just the way our storylines worked out. Yeah.
Now, all three of you write in third person, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which it's so interesting, because I've heard a lot. Somebody once recommended to me, the thing about writing in first person is if you ever fudge any of the facts, you can be like, oh, that one person was an unreliable narrator. And like, I wrote 9 books, and in book 9, I was suddenly like, oh, this guy who's been an only child for 8 books, I actually had a brother in the first book. And so I was like, okay, the woman who narrated the first book, she thought it was a brother, it wasn't. But when you're writing in third person, kind of like you're the voice of God, and therefore you have to get all these facts right.
Yeah, and not for not. I mean, every writer has their own thing. I'm not a fan of the unreliable narrator. It's just not my cup of tea.
My narrator wasn't meant to be unreliable. She just
It was the unreliable writer in his case.
Right.
Shut up.
Right.
Shut up.
Character.
Yeah.
I have done the unreliable character many times, but yeah, I mean, it's all depends on how you handle it.
Yeah, we try to, I think all 3 of us try to write in a deep third person point of view. So it's not omniscient where you know everything. So that character can still have things wrong if they see the world in a certain way.
Yeah.
I think that helps.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as you're not colliding the events, you don't want, Weezer to go on a bender on Valentine's Day, but she's supposed to.
I do now. I want to read that.
but then in the other book, she was supposed to be at the wedding that day. So, that's the thing. You don't want that to happen.
Oh God, Weezer's going on a bender in the 4th book. So
there you go.
Yeah. Well, there's a winery, right? So,
Yeah. It's funny you talk about like using characters from movies. Stacey, I have to give credit where credit is due, and Stacey is really the one who came up with Weezer. I just kind of played along with it. Weezer is after the movie from Steel Magnolias, Shirley MacLaine's character, and blended with the character from it's I can't think of it. The TV show.
Let me know if you want help.
What?
Let me know if you want help.
I want help.
Virgin River.
Virgin River. What's the character's name?
Hope.
So those two characters merge together into this crazy woman who runs around with like a coat and her hair in rollers with a shotgun and cowboy boots down there, who meddles in everybody's life. I mean, and I just love her, but she's got my hair.
I've seen women like that in the Pine Barrens.
Yeah.
She's just so funny.
I was going to ask a tactical question. I mean, these are all self-published books, and you are all accomplished self-published authors. Mm-hmm. How do you handle that? Do you each publish the books in these series independently and then link them together as a series?
Yes. That's exactly how we do it.
So we all independently publish them on all platforms, and then Amazon has this wonderful way of you can list a second contributor, and our second contributor is Candlewood Falls, and then we create an Amazon page that is Candlewood Falls, and then you go in and claim it. So when you go to Amazon, you'll see a second contributor, and then you can go and it'll list all of the books in the world.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That is really, really interesting.
Yeah. It's a great way for readers to find us all at once.
Right. And the other great thing is that Jen does our covers.
Yeah.
So our covers, all the branding is the same. So we have the Candlewood Falls on the top, and actually, let's see.
I know, I was going to say, wait, I have some.
So we've got the Candlewood Falls logo here, and then, but we all have a little bit different style of our own branding of the picture. But the series branding is our name here and here. So that works out really nice. So the readers can look at it and instantly recognize that it's a Candlewood Falls novel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that definitely, the branding is on point for that, because that is something that you want to get right, and because it lets people know that's the novel that you're in, the world that you're using. I'm just looking at it. So I see the random one that I clicked on isn't in KU. So are you guys in KU? You're not, right?
No, we're not. Yeah.
So do you sell it wide on the other stores? So do the other storefronts allow you to do a similar sort of linking thing between? No. You're all shaking your heads.
No. Yeah.
Not that I haven't found a good go around yet. Not that I haven't looked for one.
Yeah.
So I try to keep the subtitle every time I'm putting my books out on the other platforms. So each of our books is its own series. So my series is Small Town Wild Romance. So you have that series. So I have the book title, say it's Wild in Love, which is the spring book that came out this month. And then my subtitle is A Candlewood Falls novel. And then, the series name would be The Small Town Wild Romance. So it's kind of a lot, but it helps to keep the branding, or helps people to recognize that, oh, these are part of the Candlewood Falls world.
It also helps with searches. So if people are looking for Candlewood Falls, or they're looking for author name, or they're looking for series name, or they're looking for title name, it actually helps with searches in all of the platforms, except for Apple. Apple's a little of its own little world. That's a really hard search engine to crack.
Yes, agree with that.
Do you have a website where you have them all as well?
We all have our own websites. Yeah.
So there's no Candlewood Falls website.
We have a Candlewood Falls Facebook readers group. So that's the only thing that we have everything together there. But we don't have our own website. Our Candlewood Falls
website, right.
And I think what seems like why it's so genius is, series are what make or break authors. If you write a series of books, and when you're advertising your books, you're not just advertising one book, you're advertising the series. And I guess with you guys, by continuing this, what you're doing is you're not each marketing one book, you're marketing 3 books. You're like the rising tide lifts all of you.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly. Yep, exactly. And in the self-published world where there's so many authors, it's great to be able to work together with 2 smart, amazing women who have great ideas, and it helps us all get out to readers, to find readers.
Right. And it's interesting because I just got a review from the April book, and somebody in her review said, the more I read in Candlewood Falls, the more I fall in love with the town. So it's, really great that she loves all the books, and, it's not just, it's my reader or whatever. It's all of our reader, and so that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
I guess each book is can be read as a standalone.
Yes. Yeah, we designed it that way too. So every book has its own hero and heroine that has their happily ever after or happily for now, so that a reader can find us anywhere along the way, and in any author. So
right, exactly. I mean, that's great. It's multiple entry points to the series, and then it allows them to discover it however they found it, and then move on to all the rest of them. So that's
I've only written 2 series where they're not standalones, and I'll never do it again, to be honest with you.
It's tough. It's tough to do the marketing on it, right?
That, I bundled them, and I will tell you, they sell better as a bundle than they do as individual books. Of course, they're novellas as well. But the other thing is the marketing. You might as well only market the first one, to be honest with you. And everything else I've done is either a series, 7-book, 9-book, 3-book, 4-book series. It's just so much easier. But again, everything is also a standalone. So you could pick up book 3 and not be lost. You could go, now I want to go back and find out about these other couples, or go, keep reading. It's not going to matter one way or the other. And I think, the 3 of us are in total agreement on that philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah, makes sense for sure. So when you launch, you all launch at the same time, the next book, and then you all go off and do your own thing when it comes to advertising and booking newsletters and putting it out on, Amazon ads or Facebook or wherever else you're advertising. Is that right?
Yeah, we do some of our own, and then we do some stuff together too.
Yeah, we like to do like a Facebook Live together, or invite our readers into a Zoom meeting or whatever. They enjoy that. They enjoy talking with us, so that's always fun. Yes, anything we can do to connect with readers.
Absolutely. Readers are the reason why we get to do this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, Jen took a trip up and we had a couple of in-person signings. And then Stacey and I, since we live in the same town, we get to do a little bit more because, we find something, hey, you want to do this, next week? Yeah, sure. And then we can go do that. So our readers get a kick out of seeing us together.
Yeah.
So how are you doing signings? Are you like just booking it yourself and then telling people on the Facebook page, hey, we're going to be at this place at this time and come on down?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Now, when I get back up to New York for the summer, I can, they're only a 4.5 hour drive. So I can go do more with them.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's going to be awesome.
Upstate New York is like, it's not quite the same, but there is the same, New Yorkers and New Jerseyans share the same soul.
Well,
yeah.
I'm originally from upstate New York, but in the summertime, I live in Western New York, kind of different planet. Rochester's a little different than upstate New York.
But now you live in Florida, which is full of people from New Jersey anyway.
No, so New Jerseyans, although the people across the canal from me are from New Jersey, and they're very nice. They're from the shore, Stacey.
The people from the shore are very nice. Jen.
But actually, so a lot of people from New Jersey live on the other coast, the Gulf Coast. I'm on the East Coast. So there's just a bunch of New Yorkers over here.
Oh, I know exactly one. Yeah, Miami's on the East Coast, whereas
yes. Yeah, I'm 2 hours north of Miami.
Well, I think that's amazing. And so in terms of marketing this, do you all just decide to market your own individual books and have the crossover there? Or do you because I know with my series, I advertise the series page and that helps sell all the books. Do you do any crossover promotions or anything?
Oh, yeah, we have both. I'm trying to think of some of the last crossover stuff we've done. But yeah, if there's an opportunity to promote all 3 books at once for that release, then we'll do that. And then because we are all authors with other projects and other books, we also still promote our own stuff. And the idea, and I think it's working, is I have readers who have read me who now read them. So, that was the idea. It's the, me, you trust me as an author. So you're going to read my book. And then right at the end of my book, I tell you, go read their books. My committed reader trusts me enough to go read their books, and their committed readers do the same in our direction.
And I imagine you have your own newsletter, your own mailing list, and your own newsletters. So when you release a new book, I imagine you must be sending out an email about your new release. But are you also mentioning, and by the way,
yes, definitely
these other 2?
Always,
absolutely.
And
I just sent out a newsletter. I also have a publisher, so I can't control when my publisher releases my books. So I had a dual release, which happened to go at the same time as Candlewood Falls. So I decided to stagger when I did my newsletter, would not bombard them with Candlewood Falls and my published book with Lady Boss Press. So the other day I sent out a Candlewood dedicated, I always do one that's everything, just a dedicated Candlewood Falls. And also because Kathy and Stacey had an in-person thing in New Jersey, I can't be there because I'll be in Florida. But so I sent, the 3 books and also their in-person page, and it was just dedicated to Candlewood Falls.
Sure.
And so, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we absolutely do that.
So we are approaching the top of the hour, but I mean, Craig, do you have another question before I jump in with mine?
My question was really sort of a larger kind of thing, which is basically whether or not they have any advice for other people that were looking to write in shared worlds. That might be a big question, though. So I don't know if you have something quicker, jump in with it.
Well, I was going to ask, what are your plans for this series? And I think Craig's question is brilliant. What are your plans for the series? You have the 4th book coming out. Where are we going to see Candlewood Falls go?
That's a great question. And we have a 4th book coming out in August, and we are milling around the idea of continuing for the rest of the year with maybe 1 or 2 more releases. And then we're going to see where we go. If the readers are like, give us more, we will listen to what the readers want. Whatever the readers want is what we do.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Absolutely.
that's the way to do it for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, so back to that then. If to what I was saying, obviously we've talked a lot about how you guys do it and how it works. So that I'm sure anybody who's looking to do this is going to already have a good idea of how, at least how you guys do it. But is there any sort of advice that you would give to somebody who is thinking about writing in the shared world? Either I imagine one thing would be, let's say, make sure that you pick a partner that you can trust, and that is, that is on the same sort of wavelength as you in terms of, what you want to write, right?
That would be my advice. Pick your partner as well.
Yeah, that's a big one. You want somebody who has the same vision that you have. Because otherwise, I don't see it going anywhere, because you'd be, fighting each other rather than working collaboratively. And I think that would be the big advice is really decide who you want to work with, and, make sure you have good communication with them.
And to know your goals, because I think that's important too. So have an idea of what you want for the series and for the world. Not that things can't shift and change, but have an idea when you get started of where you're going, because that helps you plan. And this is absolutely something you have to plan in advance. We picked these 4 release dates a year ago. Mm-hmm. So you plan, like really know what your goals are, because then you'll also know what your marketing goals are and how you want to achieve those goals. Sorry, Jenny, you're going to say something.
No, I was going to say, I think my biggest piece of advice would also be to anyone getting into this in general, is to understand that success is not going to happen overnight. Your sales, just because you're writing in a shared world, is not going to happen overnight. You could pick a partner who has more sales than you, or is a title or whatever, and it doesn't mean that you're just going to arbitrarily have a lot of sales. It's hard work. It takes time. It takes dedication, and you've got to put it in there, and you have to give it time. We've been giving this time. We've been working at it. We spent a year before we even published our first book. Planning and doing the work, and you've got to put in the work, and you've got to be willing to make some sacrifices to get there. Again, I've been in this business since 2003. It's not easy. I was there when Kindle worlds fell apart, and I've written in a lot of other worlds, universes, or whatever. Some with success, some with not success. I've written in some pretty famous people's worlds that I have not done well in, and I've written in others and I've done incredibly well in. And I will say, this is some of the proudest work that I have done in a world. And I love working with these ladies. So you just have to know that it's going to take time. It's a slow build, and sometimes it's the best way to go about it. Just don't quit just because it gets hard.
Oh, and it's going to get hard. But everything is not to be smart, but everything worth having is worth working for, not to be cliche, but it's true. And like Jen said, we planned a whole year before that first release. So we put in the time and the effort and the conversations. We have spent hours together, hours and hours. Sometimes I see these 2 more than I see the people I live with. So,
yeah. And back in 2018, so 4 years ago, Jen, you wrote a blog for us about Amazon shutting down Kindle worlds, and I remember that affected you a lot, right? Like you had a lot of books that were written in other worlds that you then had to scramble to figure out what to do with. So I think the takeaway is pick a partner that's more reliable than Amazon.
Yeah.
And I picked these ladies.
Sounds like it's working for you.
That is a wonderful thing to wrap up this intro. I think we could have probably gone on for another couple of hours because you are all fascinating. So maybe we'll talk about having you guys back. But unfortunately, we have a deadline to wrap up. But before I go, I'll ask each of you in turn where we can find you all, and obviously we'll put the links to Candlewood Falls in there. I'll start off with you, KM Fawcett. Where can everyone find you?
So you can find me on kmfawcett.com, and also on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter, but I rarely go to Twitter, so you probably don't want to find me there. So I would say Facebook and find me online on my website.
So what about Stacey?
You can find me at staceywilk.com, and you can sign up for my newsletter there. And you can find me at my Facebook reader group. We have a ton of fun at Stacey's Novel Family, and I am also on Instagram.
And last but definitely not least, what about Jen?
You can find me at jentalty.com. You can also find me on Facebook, and I have a group there called the Talty Crew. I'm also on Instagram, and I just made the leap to TikTok.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
Well, before we wrap up, Craig, do you have any final thoughts or words?
No, I just want to thank you all for coming. This has been a wonderful chat. I mean, we've learned a lot about writing in shared worlds. I think anybody who is interested in that idea is definitely going to want to hear what you ladies have to say about it, because you are the experts. 12 books in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
So yeah, if anybody wants to read our books and see how we do it, like the plug there.
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure there is nothing that a bunch of girls from New Jersey ganging together can't accomplish. So,
Yeah,
So true.
very true.
So true.
well,
Very true. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you very much, Craig. And this was great.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I found this was so energizing and inspiring to me. So thank you guys. You've been awesome. And to everybody listening or watching, hopefully you enjoyed this, found it valuable. Let us know. Drop a comment down below. If you haven't already, click the like button. And if you haven't already, subscribe. And we will be back very soon with more from Fully Booked. Thank you very much. And we'll speak to you soon.